Jay, where you been here lately? Get out of town. I didn't know that. We got some spots on the side too. Got a couple down front and some on the sides there. Good. All right, got plenty of room for everybody. There's another spot down there if somebody wants to go down there. Be a good place. You got it, Chief? All right. Well, first of all, let me say good afternoon and thanks everyone for being here. I do want to recognize some of the guests that are here on the stage. I'll try to get everybody worked in here, but I do know Director Karsten, Department of Public Safety's here, Colonel Olson's here, Lieutenant Colonel Henderson's here, the Osage County Sheriff is here, Cole County Sheriff's here, Chief from Columbia, Chief from Kansas City, Chief from St. Louis, Chief from Springfield, Chief from Rolla, Callaway County's represented here, Chief of Arnold's here, and the Sheriff of Lewis County is here. So hopefully I've caught everybody. If I miss anybody, I appreciate all these men and women up here today standing up for this press conference today and what we're going to be discussing. As your governor and former law enforcement officer for 22 years, protecting our citizens and upholding the laws of our state are the utmost importance to my administration. Crime has been a problem in our state long before COVID-19, and we have seen it escalate even more in recent weeks, specifically in our big cities. Just a couple of nights ago, Kansas City reached 101 homicides for this year, a 35% increase from last year. Last night, 4 people were shot and killed in St. Louis, bringing the number of homicides so far this year to 130, compared to 99 at the same time last year. From May to June alone, data from the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department shows significant increases in reports of violent crime. In St. Louis County, aggravated assaults with a firearm are up 19% year to date. Innocent children are being shot and killed way too often. These are just the grim numbers, but the effects of violent crime across our state are best measured in lives. Innocent lives lost, futures cut short, and families hurting. Police officers all around this state are also hurting. They are maxed out to the limit. They have been dealing with protests for months. They've been dealing with crime underneath the blanket of peaceful protest, along with the violence that goes on every day in their jobs. If there is ever a time to make sure we give the resources for our law enforcement officers across this state, now is that time. Now is that time we as citizens show our support for the men and women that wear those uniforms to fight violent criminals. All of this is unacceptable. We cannot continue to let violent criminals destroy our cities and get away with it. We are better than that in Missouri. We need to stop worrying about law-abiding citizens and start focusing on the real problem of violent crime. We must hold violent criminals accountable for their actions. Since last year, my administration has been working to address this issue. When St. Louis asked for help last fall, we answered the call by committing state personnel to task forces in the city. We have worked with the African American community, the clergies, civic and community leaders, law enforcement, mayors across the state to develop solutions. By working together, we proposed legislation last year to help fight violent crime and make our communities safer. However, we were all very disappointed this didn't get done. We truly believe that these are tools that could be used in many of the situations we are seeing today. And we are committed to doing everything we can to get this done. Already, we are taking action. The United States Attorney General Barr recently announced the launch of Operation Legend in Kansas City. This is a coordinated law enforcement initiative across the federal law enforcement agencies, working in conjunction with state and local law enforcement officers to fight the surge of violent crime. And today, I am calling for a special session on violent crime to begin on Monday, July the 27th. And let me be clear, this call for special session will be narrowly focused on violent crime. There's going to be a lot of question asked about the other things that are being talked about with the things that have involved the protest around the state. Those issues will come. Those conversations will take place, but they need to take place in a legislative session where there's time to deal with it, where there's time to have committee hearings, and there's time to do the process of what the legislators do. Right now, the most important thing we can address in this state is the violent crimes and the homicide rates in our state, and that's what this session is going to be about. This session will focus on 6 provisions relating to violent crime, including endangering the welfare of a child, a witness protection fund, witness statement admissibility, juvenile certifications, unlawful transfer of weapons, and public safety employee residency requirements for St. Louis. I want to be clear that violent crime isn't just a St. Louis and Kansas City problem. It is a Missouri problem, and we cannot wait until next session to address it. It must be addressed now, which is why we are having this special session. None of us, no matter where we're from, want to see our children being shot in the streets. That's not who we are in this state. We as parents and grandparents, it's about protecting our children. It's about protecting our communities. And if the criminal justice system is going to work, all parts of it must be in sync. Law enforcement, prosecution, and sentencing. If any of these are not working right or not doing their job, the whole system fails. The only way we can truly make a difference fighting violent crime and make our communities safe is by working together. Working together not only at the state level, but also the local agencies, especially local law enforcement. If you talk to any county or city police department, and there are hundreds of unfilled law enforcement positions, somewhere between 200 and 300 just between St. Louis and Kansas City, simply because less and less people want to work in this arena. People need to understand the sacrifices that law enforcement officers make every day, especially when everything that's going on in our state right now. If there was ever a time to stand up for law enforcement, now is the time. They are the frontline response for Missourians. We must support them and give them the respect they deserve, because we cannot fix this problem without them. If we are to change violent criminal acts across this state, we must work together. We must do our jobs, and we must support law enforcement officers, and we must start prioritizing the prevention of crime across this state. With that, I'm going to open it up for a few questions. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. We're going to open up for a few questions here. The chiefs will be here and the sheriffs will be here afterwards, so if you want to catch them, they've agreed to take some questions. But as soon as I finish up here, we'll leave the stage, and you can go from there, all of you there. So, Kelly?
Hi, Governor. Back in 2017, the state repealed its requirement to have a permit to carry a concealed gun. And I know that some city officials have wanted to reinstate that, at least in their jurisdictions. I didn't hear that on your list of 6 items. Why not allow local governments to exceed state requirements when it comes to firearm restrictions?
Yeah, I think you know as well as I do that's a very controversial issue, and that needs to be taken up in legislative session. It'll take some time to get through those kind of things when you do that, when you go to hearings. I don't think a special session is the time for that. I think, most of the things we're talking about here today, most everybody is on board with it. It's a nonpartisan agenda, and I think it's important to get that done. The last thing we need is a lengthy session up here and we don't get anything at the end of the day. That's not what this is about. This, again, I want to stress, is dealing with those violent criminals on the street today.
Governor, there were some lawmakers last year that wanted you to call a special session about violent crime. What's different this year? What's changed?
Well, I think we've always talked about calling a special session after the session was, because some of the things that we thought was very important, like I mentioned today, didn't get done. So that's always been a discussion after session to have that.
But wasn't this in front of you last year? Weren't there lawmakers asking you to call for a special session specifically on violent crime in 2019?
I'm not. You mean last summer?
Last summer, last year.
I'm not for sure whether it was or not. I don't know. They could have, but all I know is the situation we're in today with everything else we got going on. Look, I just think we need to do this, and sooner the better. And we got to address violent crime.
Is there something fundamentally different about right now, this period in history versus last year?
Well, I think with everything going on, I think when you see these rates going up as fast as they're going up, and I don't think any of us see the end to it right now, and all the controversial that's going on in our state right now, with what the U.S. Attorney General comes sending boots on the ground, we need more officers right now. And there's some arenas we're talking about maybe not having as many officers, but right now to fight violent crime, you're going to have trained law enforcement officers to fight violent criminals, and there's no substitute for that. So I think with those rates going up is why we're doing this right now.
And what do you think is leading?
Senator Rizzo has requested that the state provide COVID-19 testing for those working in the Capitol during a special.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything you're saying.
No. Senator Rizzo has requested that the state provide COVID-19 testing for those working in the Capitol during a special. Is that something that you would consider supporting?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Anything we can do to make it safe, be a good place to do testing. So we're fine with that, wherever that happens.
You said yesterday you spoke to President Trump about some of the violent crime going on across the state and what happened to the couple in St. Louis. Have you told him about this special session? And is he saying you should bring anything up in particular? And if so, what is that?
No, I mean, we had a discussion about me calling a special session to deal with violent crime in our state, some of the things. But he really was probably more on the issue of the incident in St. Louis that he was talking about up there with the family up there, the McCloskeys. I think that was more of the conversation there. But look, we've been in contact with the president, the vice president, the White House when it comes to violent crime in our state for weeks now. I think that's one of the reasons you've seen officers come through the federal government to Kansas City. And we're working with them every day to try to bring more resources to the state.
If all of these bills get passed as you would like, what's the measure of success? What does the crime look like next year for you? What is success for you?
Well, I hope we get them passed. Again, I think these are tools for the officers and law enforcement to use to fight violent crime. So I think, one, with the funding sources there, we got to get that out there, and we got to get it out there and let them use it. Look, the witness portion of this is a big deal, because one of the things that you have, especially in violent crime, especially in some of the areas we're talking about, people don't want to come forward and testify because they're scared. They're feared for their life. So some of the things that we can do can help with that situation. So, the whole aspect of this is we got to do everything we can from I want to say the legislative part, from the governor's side, to help all these men and women that are standing around me. They're the ones that's going to have to enforce this. They're the ones going to have to deal with it in their local communities. All I want to do is give them every possible tool I can give them from the state level to do their jobs.
And Governor, do you have any intelligence in talking to these police officers about what is leading to this surge in violence, why this is happening this summer? We're seeing this huge spike. Is it Is it related to COVID? Is it because people are stuck at home together? Do they not have a place to go to, release energy? What do you think is leading to this?
Yeah, purely speculation when you're asking. Now, the chiefs might have a better idea for what's going on right there in their communities, but I think a lot of things are happening. There's a lot of things happening with the COVID-19, some things that have occurred there where people were at home for long periods of time. I mean, that has an effect on things. We know that, I can even take the example of child abuse and child neglect. We know we're 60% down on that. People are not reporting that for one reason or another, and that's because of a change of lifestyle that we've all went through over the last 3 or 4 months. I think the availability of these police officers, and I'll say this again, are maxed out. We've been spending, I have no idea what these departments are spending on hours for their officers, but I will tell you this. Most of these guys have been dealing with protests for well over a month now, well over a month. Everybody up here on this stage has probably been affected by that somehow. But that's taken resources away from other areas, whether that be fighting violent crime in the street, because it just really is. But I don't know yet. We'll find out someday maybe what affected. But the chiefs, I think, would have a better answer for that, more detail.
Thank you. Governor Parson, there's a protest at your mansion this Saturday about the failures of the Department of Labor to send unemployment benefits to Missourians. They're asking you to step in and help. Would you like to comment on this?
Okay, say it to me again, and if you don't mind, just speak right in the mic there.
Sorry, it's a little tall. There's a protest at your mansion this Saturday about the failures of the Department of Labor to send unemployment benefits to Missourians. They're asking you to step in and help. Would you like to comment on this?
Well, let me answer that, then I'm going to get right back to violent crime. Okay, let me just do that, because I really want this to be about that and why these officers are here. Look, we didn't do a good job as we could in the unemployment in the Department of Labor. That's just all there is to it. I can't sugarcoat that. That's my responsibility as governor. It was overwhelmed, to say the least, when we got well over 440,000. Some things we've learned since then. I will tell you that we're bringing on 100 more people to be able to help provide those services there for the people there. We've had computer problems. I mean, just a number of things that have delayed the system. And we didn't do a good enough job. That's all I can tell you. And right now we're in the process of trying to fix it to make sure people get those services. And we're doing that with everything else going on. It's one of the things we're doing. So I don't know, but I don't know about the protest Saturday at the mansion. If they're looking for me, I probably won't be there, but anyhow, they protest.
Yes. Governor, will the special session next week also take a look at the root causes of violent crime, mental health, poverty, addiction, all of the items we're seeing that are currently destroying our communities and leading to acts of violence?
Right. I think some of the things in these provisions that we've talked about, we want to beef up the mental health situation in a lot of areas. Look, if you want to take the long-term effect for a lot of the areas that we're talking about that I've seen, one, you have to look at a lot of things that's going to deal with children. How are you going to give them the ability to, whether that's early childhood development, how are you going to get them back into schools? And besides not talking about COVID-19, how do you have places that are safe for them to go? Whether that's a church, whether it's a community center. All of those things, I think, are the long-term way to do it. But I think the one thing we can do, I think we can get mental health services there and do a better job of it and making sure it's going to the areas they need. I think the other thing is we can bring other people in to deal with situations to help the police officers. So basically anything we can do to free up these officers' time to fight crime, anything we can take off of their back to a state agency, we're going to try to figure out ways to do that and financially to be able to do it.
Governor, it's not on crime, but I do have a quick question for you. You announced that you vetoed House Bill 1854 because it had a large number of different provisions. But one of the things that you said that you would support has to deal with early childhood education. Part of that bill, would you support a proposed sales tax for early education in Greene County, which was proposed in that bill?
Yeah, you're talking about the one we vetoed. Is there? Yeah. I don't. Would I support one in Greene County? I think that's a bigger decision for the people of Greene County to decide whether they want to pay a sales tax or not. I'm from Polk County, so when you go to local level taxes, if it's the cities and the counties want to offer themselves to have a sales tax, I think that's fine. That's the will of the people, as long as the will of people get to vote for it for that. So, All right. Thanks everybody for being here today. I appreciate it very much. I want to thank again all the law enforcement that are here on the stage today, and I want to personally thank them for what they do every day. And those officers, those men and women that are out there on the street that I normally don't get to see, I just want them to know that I appreciate what they do every day, the obstacles they face, and I just want them to know that the governor of this state appreciates what they do every day out there. So thanks everybody for being here today. Thank you.